Democratic Senator Robert Menendez, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Our Jim Sciutto reports that a senior government official in Pakistan, a senior Pakistani government official, said that a complete withdrawal will lead to a, quote, holocaust. Now, I know you've had your issues with Karzai in the past. Are you comfortable with a zero option, no U.S. troops in Afghanistan?
Well, look, I think even the administration is not comfortable with the context of a zero option. But what it has to make very clear, which I support the administration on, is that for us to continue to have U.S. troops in Afghanistan, even at a diminished number, we need a bilateral security agreement. We need to ensure that the troops that will be there helping the Afghans continue to sustain the stability of their country and their democracy is under U.S. authority. And without that, it is very difficult for us to leave troops in any country without such a bilateral security agreement. So I think at the end of the day, we've made it very clear that we are willing to keep a presence in Afghanistan and that we want to continue to help the Afghan forces and work in counterterrorism, but we can't do that without a bilateral security agreement.
Let's turn to Venezuela. You just got back from Central and South America. I want to first point out these images of students being arrested. You can hear the person filming this screaming. It's a very tense time right now in Venezuela. The State Department just announced that last night they notified 3 Venezuelan diplomats that they have 48 hours to leave the U.S. This in response, of course, to the 3 U.S. diplomats Venezuela expelled earlier this month. Is the U.S. antagonizing the Venezuelan government with these ejections?
No, on the contrary, President Maduro finds it very easy to continuously expel U.S. officials, in this case 3 consular officers. We have absolutely nothing to do with the protests in Venezuela, but he uses that as an excuse. And of course, our response is, I think, an appropriately measured response. Look, what President Maduro has to explain to his people, how is a country so rich, oil-rich like Venezuela, at a 56% inflation rate? Why is it only growing at 1% of GDP, the lowest in Latin America? Why is it that, in fact, those students are taking to the streets, which he calls fascists? Who's the fascists? The students who go to the street to promote democracy and want greater freedoms, or those military, the militia armed individuals supporting Maduro's government and shooting and killing? Up to now, 13 innocent individuals in Venezuela with several hundred wounded. I think those are the questions that President Maduro needs to answer.
The U.S., the White House, has said they don't want to vocally be more involved or in other ways because they don't want to give Maduro the excuse of blaming the Americans. But when you see what the White House is doing or not doing, and you hear the chants from Venezuelans talking about not wanting to live under a Cuban-style dictatorship, what's your response?
Well, my response is that there are many ways to help the pro-democracy advocates in Venezuela. First of all, we could be moving for a multilateral approach with the OAS. I want to salute that the Mexicans, the Colombians, the Peruvians have all made some very strong statements about the violence in Venezuela and the need for a return to peace and freedoms for its individuals. The OAS has a democratic charter. We should be promoting that. We should also be considering that if the Maduro's government is actually in the midst with its militias, as is publicly reported, hurting individual protesters, civilians inside of Venezuela who are peacefully protesting, and it's arrested its opposition leader just for calling for protests. I don't know that we would be arresting people in the United States just for calling for protests here in Washington. Leopoldo Lopez, as one example, that in fact we shouldn't be considering targeted sanctions against those in the Maduro government who are using violence, whether that's visa revocations or targeted freezing of monetary accounts here in the United States. Those are strong messages that are not interventionist, but are about human rights and democracy.
Let's turn to the Ukraine for the last question, sir. You're about to be briefed by Victoria Nuland, the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs. Secretary of State John Kerry just said that the U.S. wants to work with Russia on helping Ukraine with the transition. Do you think Russia is a partner that the U.S. can trust?
Well, look, I'm very concerned about Russia, especially under Putin. You know, Putin thinks in the context of Peter the Great. Why was Peter great? Because he added more territory to the Russian Empire. And I think that's President Putin's views as well, adding more territory to the Russian Federation. I get concerned based upon what we saw in Georgia, in Ossetia, and elsewhere, where the Russians went in, gave in passports to those who have some type of Russian descent and said, well, these are now Russian citizens, we have to protect them. I could see that happening in the Ukraine, in Crimea, for example. So I hope we send a very strong message along with our European allies that we need Ukrainians to decide their own future without the intervention of Russia or others. And we need to do that from a position of strength because if not, Putin won't understand anything but that.
Senator Robert Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey and chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Jake.